He called me the wrong name in bed, but it wasn't another woman's name. It was a man's. Jason's. At first I thought I imagined it. We were half asleep, the room dim, his voice barely above a whisper. But I heard it. Soft, tender, like a secret he didn't mean to let slip. Jason. My breath caught in my throat. My body went still. I stared at the ceiling of our beige Pinterest-approved bedroom, the one I had decorated in soft tones and cozy textures. The room looked like comfort, smelled like lavender and clean sheets. And yet, in that moment, it felt foreign. Cold. He rolled toward me, draped an arm across my waist like everything was fine. Like he hadn't just dropped a bomb in the dark. I didn't speak. What was I supposed to say? Hey babe, quick question. Why did you just moan your best friend's name during sex? Instead, I lay there, heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. But he didn't stir. His breathing was steady, his face peaceful, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just shattered something fundamental between us. Of course I knew Jason. How could I not? He was everywhere. Nick's best friend since high school, business partners for a hot second in their 20s. The kind of guy who shows up at birthdays, barbecues, and somehow even the DMV with the same wide grin and easy charm. Jason was warm, magnetic, and deeply likable. The kind of guy who wore flannel and made it look like a lifestyle choice, not laziness. He had a wife, Caroline, and 2 little girls with matching curly ponytails. He was the picture of straight suburban stability. And yet, there were moments, tiny flickering ones, when something about the way he and Nick interacted gave me pause. Moments when Jason looked at Nick like he hung the moon. And Nick looked at Jason like he was the moon. I remember the first time I met him. It was at a backyard barbecue just a few months before our wedding. He hugged Nick like they hadn't seen each other in years, even though it had only been days. You must be Emma, he said with a warm grin, extending a hand. That's me, I replied, shaking it. Nick's told me so much about you. Oh God. Only the good stuff, I hope. Only that you swear like a poet when the IKEA furniture won't cooperate. We both laughed. He was easy to like. Effortless, even. But now, lying in bed next to a man who had just called out another man's name, his name, I couldn't laugh. I could only replay every glance, every moment, every word. The puzzle pieces started to shift. Still, I said nothing. Because maybe I did mishear. Because maybe I was overreacting. Because maybe, just maybe, it was one of those things you chalk up to exhaustion or dreams or a deeply unfortunate coincidence. When morning came, I got out of bed before the alarm. Made coffee. Tried to act normal, whatever that meant anymore. Nick came into the kitchen, hair tousled, face relaxed. He kissed the top of my head like he always did and asked, "Sleep okay?" I stared at the coffee maker and gave him a smile I didn't feel. "Yeah," I said. "Fine." But it wasn't fine. Because from that moment on, nothing felt real anymore. Not the bed. Not the man. And definitely not the name. In the days that followed, I tried to let it go. Really, I did. People say love is about trust, right? And I trusted Nick. I trusted him with my whole life. Our passwords were shared. Our bank accounts were merged. Our futures were intertwined like the roots of a very boring but dependable tree. But then, I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Little things. Stupid things. Like how Nick's whole face would light up when Jason walked into a room. Not just a smile. A full-on internal fireworks show behind the eyes. He didn't smile at me like that. Not even on our wedding day. And the memories came flooding in like water under a door I thought was sealed tight. I remembered how on double dates, Nick always managed to sit closer to Jason than to me. How at one barbecue, I got up to grab drinks and came back to find them sitting so close on the patio couch, their knees were touching. Neither of them moved when I sat down. I thought it was just guy stuff. Then there was the anniversary trip. Our 3rd wedding anniversary. I had dreams of wine country, or maybe a quiet weekend at a cabin with just us. No emails, no calls, no notifications. Something romantic. Intimate. Instead, Nick got me 2 tickets to the regional MMA championship in Nevada. "Thought you could use a break," he said, handing them over with that proud little boy grin of his. I blinked at the tickets. Since when do I care about MMA? Well, he said, scratching the back of his neck. You said you wanted something exciting. I laughed awkwardly. And you're coming with me? He smiled, but it looked almost sheepish. Actually, Jason's been dying to go. I figured I'd go with him. You could have a spa day, relax. It's kind of a gift for both of us. Both. Of. Us. Yeah. Now, standing at the sink scrubbing an already clean coffee mug, I played that memory like a rerun with bad lighting. How had I not seen it? How had I not known? Jason, Jason, Jason. Every big moment somehow had his fingerprints on it. He was the emergency contact on Nick's forms at work. He was the one Nick called first when we got the house. He was the one Nick texted before me when my dad had his heart scare. At some point, I stopped being the first call. At some point, I stopped being the one he turned to. I needed answers. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, not yet, but I also couldn't carry this gnawing feeling around anymore. It was eating me alive. That night, while we were watching TV, or rather, pretending to, I turned to Nick and tried to make it sound casual. Hey, I said, be honest. Were you ever in love with Jason? His head snapped toward me. What? I laughed to lighten it. I mean, you talk about him more than you talk about me some days. Just wondering if there's a little bromance I should know about. He smiled. That too wide, too fast smile people wear when they're trying to look chill. Emma. Come on, that's ridiculous. Is it? I tilted my head. He chuckled, but it didn't sound right. Jason's like a brother. We've just known each other forever. Then he picked up the remote and changed the subject, literally and figuratively. We never came back to it. But I did. I came back to it every night. Every time I watched them interact. Every time Jason texted and Nick's face lit up like a goddamn Christmas tree. Every time I remembered that night in bed. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. If I was building castles out of sand and suspicion. If maybe I was just jealous. But then again, I wasn't competing with another woman. And that made it so much harder. Because what do you do when the person you love isn't hiding another person from you? They're hiding themselves? It started with taxes. Not some grand discovery or snooping mission. Just taxes. The most boring betrayal origin story in the world. I was in Nick's home office, a tidy little box of a room with gray walls, a wooden desk, and the faint smell of toner and cologne. He always kept it so neat, like he was afraid of letting anything personal leak out onto the surfaces. He'd ask me to find last year's W-2s while he ran to the store. Simple enough. I opened the file cabinet. Nothing. Then the bookshelf. Still nothing. Finally, the closet. I pulled open the bifold doors, and there it was. A large dusty plastic bin labeled Old Docs. Shred? In Nick's handwriting. I popped the lid off and coughed as a small cloud of dust hit my face. Inside were stacks of random papers. Old bills, receipts, birthday cards, and college essays. I dug through, annoyed and muttering to myself. And then I saw it. A single sheet of printer paper, folded once down the middle, slightly crinkled, tucked between an old phone bill and a guide to Roth IRAs. No envelope. No date. Just plain white paper. Curiosity 1. I opened it. The first line punched me in the chest. Jason, I don't know how to say this, so I'll just say it. I'm in love with you. My mouth went dry. I kept reading. I couldn't stop. I don't know when it started. Maybe college, maybe before. But it's always been you. It's always only been you. I've tried to be normal. I've tried to be what everyone expects. But pretending is killing me. Some days I feel like I'm watching my life happen from the outside, like I'm trapped behind glass, like I'm suffocating in the version of myself I built so nobody would hate me. You don't have to feel the same, I know you never will. But I needed you to know what it's been like loving you in silence. I stared at the final sentence, the ink slightly smudged, like maybe his hand had trembled while writing it. The page slipped from my fingers and landed silently on the floor. I sat on the edge of the office chair, the weight of what I'd just read making my body feel 10 times heavier. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't me being paranoid or insecure. Nick loved Jason. Not as a friend. Not as a brother. Not as a buddy to grab wings with. Loved him. And now, Things made sense in a horrible, backwards, stomach-twisting kind of way. The way Nick looked at him. The way he lit up in his presence. The way I always felt like a background character in their story. A sick realization crawled its way up my spine. I wasn't just not the love of his life. I was a stand-in. A body. A placeholder. A feminine echo of the man he could never have. I put the letter back exactly where I found it, though I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Then I walked out of that office feeling like I had stepped through some invisible veil, one side of my life to the other, before and after. Before, I had a husband, a home, a relatively normal marriage. After, I had a lie, a role I didn't know I was playing, and a heart that felt like it didn't belong in my chest anymore. The letter sat between us on the coffee table, its single crease still sharp, like a wound that had only just begun to scab over. I had placed it there without a word after dinner, while Nick was sipping his wine, scrolling his phone like it was any other Tuesday night. The moment he looked up and saw it, everything in the room changed. His posture stiffened. His thumb froze mid-scroll. His eyes flicked from the paper to me and back again. "What is that?" he asked too casually. "You tell me." He didn't reach for it. "Emma," he began, voice flat but tight. "Why are you going through my stuff?" I almost laughed. That was the issue? "Oh, sorry," I said, with a hollow smile. "Should I have waited for your annual I'm secretly in love with my best friend performance review? Or were you going to keep that a surprise forever?" He flinched. Finally, he picked up the page and unfolded it like it might be something else. Something harmless. It wasn't. I watched his face change as he read. The tension in his jaw. The shallow breaths. He didn't ask how I found it. He didn't deny it belonged to him. He just said, too quietly, "That was never meant for anyone to read. So it's true?" My voice cracked. "All of it?" He didn't answer right away. Then, almost like something inside him broke. "Yes." It was like the walls of our house shifted, like the roof tilted a little, as if even the foundation was embarrassed. I stared at him. "So how long?" "Since I was 15, he said. "Since the day I met him." He looked small, not physically. He was still Nick, tall and broad and composed. But inside? Shriveled, like a man who'd been walking around on borrowed air. "Well, I didn't know what it was at first," he continued, voice flat. "I just knew that being around him made everything feel right, and then it didn't go away. Not in college, not after he got married, not even after I married you." I felt heat rise in my face. Not the good kind. The furious, dizzying kind that builds behind your eyes and tightens your throat. "I was your mask," I said, standing now. "Your beard, your placeholder for someone who would never love you back." He looked up, startled. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Nick?" My voice rose before I could stop it. "Because from where I'm standing it looks exactly like that. You married me because I have his eyes, his smile. You used me like a mannequin in your fantasy life." He put his face in his hands. "I thought I could make it work. I thought I could love you enough to forget him." That stopped me. For a moment, the anger melted into something colder, numb, heavy. "You thought you could love me enough?" I whispered. "Like I was your rehab program?" Silence. No defense. No backtracking. Just the sound of the air conditioner kicking on, the gentle hum of the fridge in the background, and the loudest, most deafening quiet I'd ever known. I sat back down because my legs didn't feel steady anymore. Neither did my heart. We didn't speak for a long time. And in that silence, a terrible understanding bloomed. He hadn't stopped loving Jason. He had just buried it in me. The cafe was warm in the way most downtown places were. Faux rustic with Edison bulbs, latte art, and acoustic covers of songs that used to mean something in high school. Jason spotted me first. He stood up, tall and casual, like this was just another catch-up over coffee. But when I sat down and our eyes met, I saw it in his face, the worry, the confusion, maybe even a little fear. "I'm glad you reached out," he said, offering a hesitant smile. "But I have to admit, I have no idea what this is about." I didn't waste time. "I found a letter," I said. "Nick wrote it. He never sent it, but—" "It was to you?" Jason blinked. "A letter?" I nodded, heart hammering. "He told me everything. About how he's loved you. Since you were teenagers." The silence was sharp, immediate. A stillness fell over his face like someone had dropped a curtain. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and ran a hand through his hair. "Jesus Christ," he said softly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I just watched him absorb it, like someone who's just been handed a truth so far outside his own narrative, he didn't know which way was up anymore. "I didn't know," he finally said. "Emma, I swear to God, I had no idea." I believed him. Not because I wanted to, but because it was in his eyes. Shock. Real, unfiltered disbelief. "I always thought—" He paused. "I don't know. That Nick was just intense, loyal. He could be quiet about feelings, but I figured that was just who he was." I gave a short laugh, bitter and tired. "Yeah. Turns out it was who he wasn't." Jason's gaze dropped to his coffee cup. "I love Nick," he said. "I do. But like a brother, a lifelong friend. There was never, I never saw it, and if I did, maybe I buried it too." He looked up. Guilt painted across his face like spilled ink. "If I'd known," he said quietly, "maybe I could have helped him sooner. Or helped you." There it was again, that damn ache in my chest. That heaviness I hadn't asked for. And yet, I didn't hate him. I couldn't. Jason wasn't the villain in my story. He was just another person caught in the same storm, holding an umbrella that was never built for two. "I don't blame you," I said. And I meant it. "You didn't ask for this." He sighed. "No. But I always felt something. Like a weight in our friendship. A heaviness I couldn't explain." I stirred my coffee. "Now you know where it came from." He nodded. Solemn. "I'm sorry, Emma." I looked at him, at the man I was apparently the shadow of, and realized something I hadn't expected. He wasn't remarkable. He wasn't some shining sun. He was just a man. And I was done being a moon orbiting someone else's fantasy. The bedroom looked the same. Soft beige walls. Clean white bedding. Throw pillows arranged like soldiers on parade. It was all still Pinterest perfect, like nothing had changed, except everything had. Nick sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, his suit jacket draped neatly over a chair. He hadn't cried. I had, earlier, alone, in the shower, where tears could mix with water, and no one had to be strong. "We should do this with grace," I said quietly. Not because it wasn't painful, but because it already hurt enough. He nodded, eyes distant but not cold. "I don't want to fight you. You don't deserve that." There were no slammed doors, no insults, no dramatic ultimatums. Just the soft, careful undoing of something that had never been real in the way I thought it was. "I'm starting therapy," he added. "Tomorrow?" "That's good," I said. And it was. He needed to talk to someone who wasn't me. Someone who wouldn't flinch when he said the words out loud. "I hope," he paused, voice cracking slightly. "I hope you find someone who sees you." I gave him a small, tired smile. "I hope you start seeing yourself." I packed my bags that night. Just 2 suitcases. Left the rest. Furniture, plates, the throw pillows I'd never liked anyway. I drove across town to Maddie's place, my best friend since college. She opened the door without a word, and pulled me into the kind of hug that says you're safe now. For the first time in what felt like years, I slept without waiting for someone to say the wrong name. A week later, I opened my laptop at Maddie's kitchen table and stared at the blinking cursor. I didn't start with a grand declaration or a quote about love or loss. I just wrote, "He never cheated. But he was never really mine either." The words came faster after that. Stories wrapped in sarcasm and soft pain, in small ironies and big silences. About marriages that look perfect but are built on pretending. About love that hides in plain sight. About how some betrayals are quieter than affairs, but deeper in their damage. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. I hit publish. 2 days later, the column went viral. Shares, comments, messages from strangers who'd lived in houses filled with beautiful lies. They said, "Thank you." They said, "This is my story too." And for the first time in a long time, I felt less like a placeholder, and more like a person again. The new apartment had too much light, in the best possible way. White brick walls, soft linen curtains that danced in the morning breeze, a yellow kettle that whistled like it was excited to be alive. It was all mine. Every piece of furniture chosen without compromise, every shelf filled with books I actually read, not just displayed to look clever. It had been 4 months. Nick called last week, not for help, not for sympathy, just to tell me something that mattered. I told my sister, he said. She cried, then hugged me and said, "Finally." I smiled into the phone, my tea cooling on the windowsill. "I'm proud of you, Nick." He exhaled. It sounded like years of weight leaving his chest. "Thank you, Em. For everything. For forgiving me, even when you didn't have to." We hung up with no promises, no future plans. Just two people who once pretended at forever and now knew better. I'd been on a few dates. Coffee dates, mostly. One guy was obsessed with cryptocurrency. Another kept quoting his own tweets. A third asked if I was emotionally available, and I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my wine. I wasn't in a hurry. I didn't need a new love to validate my healing. But I also wasn't hiding. Sometimes, freedom looks like waking up alone in a bed you love, with no one else's name ringing in your ears. This evening, I sat on the balcony with my laptop, the sun warm on my bare feet, the city humming below me. I sipped mint tea and listened to the birds argue over something on the next roof. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed. I wasn't the wrong woman, I was just the woman he needed to lie to himself. And now, we're both free. Not broken, just honest. I hit save, then leaned back, letting the sunlight rest on my skin. It didn't burn. It healed.